great. Thank you, Brooke. Peter and I are excited to connect with everyone today, and we're from Canon Information and Imaging Solutions. And at Canon Information and Imaging Solutions, we are helping organizations transform through digitization. And we really have had very many years of experience and have strong expertise in both digital imaging and business process automation. So most of you probably think of Canon, you think of cameras and printers and things like that. But for those of you in the Oracle ecosystem, you've most likely seen Canon Information and Imaging Solutions at a lot of the events. We're a wholly owned subsidiary. But Canon itself, of course, was founded in 1937, and Canon Americas was founded in 1963. We have more than $37 billion in revenue and over 197,000 employees. We are on the New York Stock Exchange as well as the Tokyo Stock Exchange. And, you know, as I've mentioned, we've always been recognized for imaging technology. Some of the accolades that we're most proud of is in 2019, we were voted most admired company in the computer category. And, you know, that speaks volumes, so we're pleased with that. And one of the most ethical companies. But something that really speaks to the fact that we have a lot of research and development that goes into our solutions is the fact that we've been, for the past 33 years consecutively, we've placed in the top 5 of U.S. patent earners. So, you know, that's something we're very, very proud of. So today, as Brooke mentioned, we're going to talk about how to analyze AP operations for automation success. And, you know, starting with what sets AP departments apart. So efficiency and effectiveness are key, cash and spend management, and automation. So we work with a lot of outside companies to do studies of, you know, companies in the industry and see where things are in the business world. So one of the things is, you know, who's automating, what's most important to them. So in a recent survey done by Institute of Finance and Management, these are the areas that are of concern that have caused AP departments to want to automate. Of course, compliance and security, we all know that's a huge consideration for most companies. Process standardization, everybody wants to do that to become more efficient, and then automation as a whole. So these are some of the most pressing areas, and no different for an AP department than other areas within a company. So why is it key that you and your company consider analyzing your operations before deciding to move forward with automation? You know, you want to see where your department stands against the company's goals. You want to set standards for staff performance. You want to look into what areas need the most focus, and you want to figure out what practices are most valuable within your organization, and then collect data for building a business case to move forward with this type of activity in the business. So again, we worked with Arden Partners who study the industry, and the top AP pressures that most companies are feeling are need for real-time data availability, you know, high associated costs with invoice processing, a lot of exceptions, and losing invoices and difficult finding paper invoices, which is always a problem. And then what comes to be very relevant for most companies is missing out on vendor discounts. So when asked what are your top priorities for AP invoicing to many companies, you know, the number one reason, of course, was to reduce invoice processing costs. And then other important factors were better connection for procure-to-pay processes and systems with other parts of the company, improved reporting, collaboration, and of course, better, you know, extending payment terms and optimizing their cash flow. So when we look at companies, when it comes to automating, something you want to make sure to understand is that companies who have not automated, you know, it costs them a lot more to process an average invoice, around $8.78. For example. Companies that are highly automated, that cost can go all the way down to $1.77. So that's a pretty significant difference in the cost of processing an invoice, you know, a normal invoice in a company. So that's you know, something that will help with ROI eventually. So talking about ROI, determining your cost per invoice is what information you will need. So the most important things to look at in your organization is the annual invoice volume, and not only just number of invoices, but number of pages as well. How many full-time AP clerks or AP folks are on board, the number of people, and then the average compensation and benefits. That makes it a little bit, more important if you can factor in that information as well. And that'll give you your total AP cost per invoice and that kind of thing. So here's a chart of, how to actually come up with that calculation. And then again, when looking at companies that have automated and companies that have not, those with very low levels of automation can only process about 1,350 invoices in the same time period as someone else who is now highly automated. They can go up to, say, 22,000. This is what was found by the Institute of Finance and Management. So needless to say, per full-time employee, if you're automated, a lot more invoices can be processed, and that's key. So if you become an automated organization, that leaves a lot more time for other important activities that play in at the organization and work with AP and other areas, like ensuring contract compliance, mitigating issues around compliance, understanding supplier spend, managing accruals, budgets, and then of course forecasts and managing cash. Those are other areas that are super important in any AP organization, and those can be, more time can be spent working on improving those areas once your AP side is automated, invoice automated. When you want to look at your company, this is a very big area. You want to understand your process currently. Every company is different. Many people do, similar activities in their workflows for AP, but there are many variations and differences that all factor into determining what you want to do in the future. So it's very important to take a good look at that. PO requisition, how do you receive those purchase orders? Are they, PO based, non-PO based? Are you doing OCR, capture and extraction now, or not at all? How is invoice matching done? The approval workflow, that's a key area that you can design and set up, but you need to understand the process now. And then of course, whether you're integrated with your ERP or what is being done currently. So understanding the process and the workflow is critical to analyzing and determining to move forward with automation. And obviously with inefficient workflows, backlog of past invoices will be a problem. Rectifying the cash flow, problems with vendors, whether it's late payments or just not being able to pay an invoice or something because the PO and the invoice don't actually match. Different things like that can cause, a lot of different backlog and problems. And then, inefficient workflows, you're going to miss out on early pay discounts, which most companies find is a huge benefit to receive those early pay discounts, and that is a big factor in the ROI. And then highly effective workflows. I mean, if your invoices come in and there's match rules in place, if it matches, and it can go straight through to processing that invoice. If there's an exception, it'll go to an exception workflow. But this is more of like the ideal workflow. It should be able to match automatically and create that invoice, or have a process for handling the exceptions. And if you don't analyze your operations before embarking on AP automation project or any automation project, you could have problems like wrongly sequenced digitization of AP processes, lack of trust among the stakeholders within the company, and cross-functional harmony with, anybody that's involved with that process, and even on the outside. And you don't want to waste internal resources in correcting a process that isn't working properly. And needless to say, if you don't analyze and make sure everything is in order before you move forward and can do this, you're not going to have an ROI. So that's a big problem. Everybody needs to see an ROI once they move to an automated system. So now I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who's going to talk about AP automation with JD Edwards integration, which I know is of interest to all of you. Peter?
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Those were good points of people to look at and consider when they're analyzing their particular situation for AP automation. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about the Canon AP automation solution in our market-leading solution that we've had out there in the marketplace for some time now, having customers around the world utilizing our accounts payable solution. Let's start with the process overview of the accounts payable automation solution, which you're looking at here right now. And we can start on the left-hand side of the screen where you see a supplier. Well, it's a typical environment is a supplier is submitting an invoice to an organization. They can do it in basically two ways, paper or email. We see more and more companies nowadays receiving their invoices via email, which is very good because when you have an automated solution like Canon's, we automatically grab those invoices off the email and start the process. So an emailed invoice does not ever have to be touched or printed out by an individual in your organization. It's all handled automatically by the solution itself. A paper invoice is a little bit different, of course, because what has to happen there is somebody's going to have to open up that envelope, put the invoice on a scanner, and scan it into a network folder, if you will. And the Canon solution can pull that network folder just like it pulls the email boxes where the email is coming in. And it can pull that network folder, and when an invoice arrives in that, it'll just take that from the network folder and start the process. So paper and email invoices are typically what we see. Of course, there are still a few companies or organizations that are receiving invoices by fax, believe it or not. Hopefully not too many of those. Fax is a very poor quality, as we all know, but in order to relieve that situation, if you are receiving invoices via fax, we would connect directly to the fax server so they don't have to get printed out and the quality getting diminished even more. So we can handle a fax solution as well, a fax invoice, excuse me. And so let's concentrate strictly on the paper and the email. They come in, email ones nobody has to touch. The paper ones, somebody's going to have to scan it into a network folder. Once we have an electronic invoice, our solution then imports it into the solution and starts to analyze it. By analyzing it, we utilize our OCR technology, optical character recognition technology. The name of that technology is called Iris Extract. Iris is our solution. It's a Canon solution. It has over 3,000 customers worldwide utilizing the OCR technology. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail in the next slide. But right now, the OCR will grab that information off the invoice, the electronic invoice, extract it, and then it'll validate that information against your JDE master data. That's what the verification is for. So not only does it read the information on the invoice, pull it out and analyze it, but it also verifies it against your master data to make sure that the information going forward is accurate. At this point in time, you could also do your GL coding here, or you could also do your PO match here. Depending on how you do it, whether it's completely with accounts payable, then you would do it here. If it's not within accounts payable, then you would go to the next step, which is then for a non-PO invoice, we would incorporate our workflow technology. Workflows are based upon your business rules on how you handle various types of invoices. Those rules are assigned by type of PO, by vendor, by business unit, however you assign your workflows and what the process that an invoice must go through in order to be approved and verified and GL coding established. So in the workflow side, under our enterprise imaging platform, you can also identify the GL coding or the distribution, and you can have the approval. And you can have as complicated an approval process as you need. The workflow technology in the solution is extremely robust and is able to essentially duplicate any business process that you might have. On the PO side, once we have the verified invoice on this against your master data that you saw on the left, and we have the PO match, we would automatically generate the voucher real time in JD Edwards. Nobody has to type in that data. It all happens automatically. Once we have an approved and a GL coded invoice on the non-PO side, then we also generate that voucher automatically in JD Edwards. Once the voucher has been generated in JD Edwards, then you take over with its normal process payments as you do normally today in processing your payments for your invoices. That's an overall view of the solution. Let's go to the next slide, Lisa, so we can talk a little bit about some of the capabilities in more detail. I think we have a lag in the slides, maybe not. Here we go. So invoice data capture. What you're seeing here is just an example of an invoice that came in and the data that the Canon solution will capture. Let's start on the top left-hand side. We'll look at the invoice, the OCR technology. We'll look at the invoice, extract the information regarding the vendor or the supplier, and based upon the information it obtains, it will match that against the master data, supplier data in your JD Edwards system. So by key points of data in the on the invoice, we're able to match it up against the correct vendor in your master data, and therefore be able to identify the vendor number. Vendor number never comes in on the invoice, of course, so we have to check it against the master data in order to obtain that, but the vendor number is a key piece of data that's necessary to generate the voucher. We'll validate against a purchase order if it's a purchase order based invoice. We will validate not only that it's a legitimate purchase order for that specific vendor, but that the information on that purchase order is correct. So we're looking at things like the description, the price, the amount, the order quantity, all of these areas in which we are verifying that information against your master data. We validate against the organization, of course. So you may have multiple business units or multiple companies, so we can validate against that specific company or your business unit. And we can also do other things such as making sure that the addition adds up correctly, as you see on the bottom right, just to make sure that any rules that you have for shipping and tax add up as well. All these rules can be provided into the solution itself. Now, a key component here of the OCR technology is that it is non-template based. It's an intelligent OCR. So in other words, many solutions that you have today will require you to actually generate a template for each of your suppliers that will identify where to find that invoice number or the PO number or the vendor or supplier name, etc. In the Canon solution, no templates are required. The OCR is intelligent enough to find wherever that invoice number may be on that page. It pulls it off and it starts the process. You'll see how that works. Well, you won't see how it works today, but we'll talk about that in a little more detail going forward. But also, you'll understand the fact that by not having templates, you're reducing a tremendous amount of work within your organization because no one has to maintain those templates. And when a template is changed by a vendor, your system does not work. So having a non-template based intelligent OCR is a very key component and capability of a solution. Next slide, please. In the PO matching, we identify PO invoices and match them with the PO from within your master data. So we're looking at the partial and complete matching of multi-line invoices. The system has the ability to match multiple line invoices to your actual PO. So it's looking at things as the total, the price, as well as the quantity ordered. And it's comparing that to the specific purchase order data, which you see down below at the bottom of this slide, to make sure that it's accurate, that the price is accurate, that the order quantity is accurate, and of course that the totals are accurate. And it's also reflecting any receipts against that total so that we have a total match that says that this specific invoice is actually legitimate and is able to be processed further. Let's go to the next slide. Excuse me. For a non-PO invoice, we have invoice coding. Just went too far, Lisa. Okay, with a non-PO invoice, now we're going back. But let's start. I'll just talk about the non-PO invoice anyway. In a non-PO invoice, what we're doing is, next slide, Lisa. Okay, there we go. It's hard to get it on there, huh? The ability to approve a change in invoice coding is capable for a non-PO invoice. What we do here is we pull in your GL codes directly from your master data, and we match it up with the type of invoice that we're processing. Some invoices may have a specific grouping of GL codes, and we will pull those out and just show that small grouping to the individual who is actually coding that invoice, so that they're not looking at hundreds or thousands of GL codes. They're looking at a set that only pertains to that particular type of invoice. They can do a distribution here. They can split it among multiple GL codes and provide that with the coding allocate to multiple accounts. Next slide, please. We have unlimited approval policy capability, as I mentioned earlier. It's a very robust workflow solution. As you can see on the left-hand side, you can have approver names, you can have approver conditions, status, as well as you can have multiple types of configurations for that specific workflow. It can be based upon dollar amount, supplier, invoice type, project, account range, literally anything that you may be utilizing today in order to define your workflows. You would build those workflows, and we show you how to do it in the first place, and then you can have multiple invoices and associated with different types of invoices, as I mentioned before. It could be an invoice type or an invoice based upon a certain business unit or company or what have you in your organization. Next slide. What you're looking at here is a voucher screen with attachments. Because of our integration with JDE, and it's a bi-directional integration, we're able to go not only and generate the voucher automatically for you, but as you can see there's a link that shows that we have established a link to the specific invoice that is maintained in our content repository, which is part of the solution as well. So by clicking on that link, you would be able to see an actual image of the invoice without it being attached to JDE specifically, because if you attach documents to your ERP system, eventually you're going to bog it down. These are held in the content repository and they're linked specifically to the voucher. Excuse me. Within that specific screen here, you can also have other types of documents. So let's say you collect bills of lading or packing slips at the receiving dock, and you want to see those and have those related to the voucher itself. They can be dragged and dropped and put right into this screen so that all of your documents associated with that invoice can be viewed right directly from JD Edwards, and nobody in JD Edwards has to go out to actually sign into a document management solution or content repository to view them. All can take place from within JDE without having to leave it. You can also share these documents by email. You can download them. You can check them out. They have version control, comments throughout the solution. You can have comments that are specific to you only, or you can have comments that can be seen by everyone. And you can have comments that go all the way through the system and are stored at the voucher level as well. You have a tremendous amount of capability here to communicate to others within the organization about any specific invoice. Next screen, please.
Remote access and ease of use. There must be a delay.
All right, remote access and ease of use. Part of the uniqueness of our solution is the fact that it has mobile capability. So as the workflow we talked about earlier, what can happen there is if people in many organizations, as a matter of fact, probably most of us today on this call are remote, just because of what's going on with the coronavirus today. Otherwise, in a normal environment, normal day, you have individuals in the organization, especially your management people who travel quite a bit, and that can cause bottlenecks in your processing of an invoice because they're out of the office. In this case, the workflow will go directly in an email to their email, whether it's on their phone or on their laptop or on an iPad or wherever it might be. They will get the message that they have an invoice to review and to approve. They can click on the link and see the actual invoice itself. They will receive all the information of what has happened to that invoice so far, who's reviewed it, what the status is, and they can just approve it right from their phone or their mobile device, whatever it might be, and go forward without having to stop the process. The invoice can continue through the process of being reviewed and approved, and finally getting the voucher created within JD Edwards. Another component, if you look in the middle here, you'll see we have analytics. The system provides a complete database in history of everything that takes place, which is on the right. Who touched it when, it's all date and time stamped. And we provide that information in the database that you can actually create reports from, but also we provide analytics, which are graphical in view, and gives you a complete view of what's going on and what has gone on for a specific invoice at any point in time, as well as for all your invoices. How many are in process? What's the value of those invoices? How many invoices are from a specific vendor, et cetera, et cetera. And it also shows where bottlenecks are in the system, where someone may not be approving or reviewing an invoice very rapidly. And so invoices are backing up at that specific point of a workflow. All part of the solution and all part of the database that we maintain. Here's the actionable data and the analytics, an example of the graphical view of the analytics that we provide. And like I said, you can also extract data. You can report against it. It's all one central database. Everybody is looking at the same information at the same time. There are no silos here that nobody gets to see. It's all the same data. I think that might be it. Nope, one more. Because of our integration with JDE, we also provide through Cafe One the capability to attach documents at any transaction screen within JDE Edwards. For instance, you might have a general ledger input, a significant GL entry that you want to attach the supporting documents. You can do that. Or supplier method, where you might want to have the information for that specific supplier, the W-9s, et cetera, attached to that specific supplier so that they're right there. Nobody has to go to a file cabinet to find them. You can do the same with employee data information, whether it's resumes or applications or what have you. And in purchasing could also have contract information for a specific vendor or any other type of information that the procurement department might have that would be helpful to them. All these can be attached and visible right directly from JDE, as you can see here, as samples of JDE transaction screens where we have attached those types of documents. I believe that's the last screen now.
Yes, and I think Brooke will come back on.
Yep, sorry guys.
So there's contact info. Oh, go ahead, Brooke.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself really quick. Okay, so awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Let me just take the, I'm gonna just change my screen really quick. If you guys can just let me know when you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, and I combined your names there. Sorry, Lisa and Peter. I just want to cover a few follow-up items before we get into our question and answer section of our webcast. So our webcast today was part of our free ongoing educational webcast series, and you can see that we have lots of webcasts that are coming up. And we add more every day, so make sure to check back. And GSI provides extensive free educational resources for the JD Edwards community, including our monthly newsletter called the GSI Insider and our monthly resource center, where you can access our on-demand webcasts, white papers, and we also offer virtual workshops as well. We have a forum, a collaborative forum called erptalk.com, which is a problem-solving forum where you can get your JD Edwards and other enterprise questions answered. And you can also contribute and answer other people's questions. And make sure you stay connected with us on social media. All of our handles are currently listed on the screen. And you can see our most up-to-date posts of webcasts, events, industry insights, and a lot more. All right, so if you'd like to sign up for our weekly email reminders or our upcoming educational webcasts, go to getgsi.com, go to resources and events on the main page, and then you can select JD Edwards on the right-hand side. And while I see we have a few questions submitted, I would like to remind everyone that if you would still like to submit a question online, you can do so using the questions panel in the GoToWebinar console window on the right side of your screen. And if you minimized your console earlier, please click the left-facing arrow key to redisplay it. All right, so let's see here. Our first question, Lisa and Peter, are you guys ready?
Ready?
Awesome. Okay, our first question comes from Bill, and he asks, how long does it take to implement your solution?
A good question, Phil. I mean, it really depends on the organization itself. Every company is a little bit different. It depends on where you are. Is your master data in good shape? Do you have your workflows defined already? But we like to give a standard estimate, which is typically 8 weeks, 8 to 12, depending on your specific situation, and also depending upon the availability of the resources within your organization as well.
Okay, and a follow-up question from that, do you guys support World?
We don't support World, but what we do is we have an interface with World. We can go ahead and you won't have the type of integration you have with Enterprise One, but you will have the ability to generate a voucher automatically so that nobody has to manually enter it. We can still verify against the master data in World.
Okay, great. And then I've got one more question, which I can answer this one. It was just if this will be available after, if they wanted to share out to their company. And the answer to that is yes. We will send you a follow-up email, and it'll include the presentation as well as a link to our YouTube site where you can actually view this whole recording. So that appears to be the end of our questions. Lisa and Peter, I would like to thank you so much for your presentation today and everybody for your questions. As a follow-up from today,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up from today's webcast, we ask that you complete a short 1-minute survey when you exit, and you will be receiving an email with a link to our resource center. Like I said earlier, that you can access the presentation as well as the recording. And after today's webcast, we will do the drawing for the $25 Amazon gift card, and anyone that attended the entire webcast will be eligible, and we will notify the winner. And if you have any follow-up questions for myself, Peter, or Lisa, our contact info is currently listed on the screen. And we want to thank you so much again for attending today, and we hope that you all stay safe, and we hope that you have a great day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.